Hi there, YouTube. Sorry about the restart there. People rightfully complaining I didn't have the right labels on these things, and they're not easy to find. So sorry we had to restart that. Let's bring in our friends over at Twitch here. Record this. Hi everybody, welcome to Stress Free Lounge. I'm your host Bill Whittle, and it is the first day of February 2024. Hope everybody's doing well. We had to restart our YouTube stream because I forgot to label it. A little bit of echo here. Another flawless launch. Yes, exactly right, Karen X. We have a specialty here, and not only a specialty, I might add a streak. You know, something like a 380 episode streak. Don't think we've ever done a single show where there wasn't something that went south in some way or another. But anyway, here we are. So good to see everybody. Every other show I say I'm going to have to keep this one short tonight, but I'm going to have to keep this one short tonight, so I'm going to get into the questions pretty quick. Couple things before then, though. I have finally gotten a hold, it's not like it's their fault or anything, it's just after, well, like I said, it's not like their fault, but I have gotten a hold, had a chance to sit down and talk with the guys at Daily Wire regarding the Frank Luke script, and we've had a chance to kind of figure out where to put it, because I haven't turned it in because I really wasn't sure which, format we really thought we were going to be in. But what it looks like is, it looks like it's going to be a single movie, just short of 2 hours, and it's going to have a somewhat different format than the usual traditional 3-act structure. So it's going to be essentially a 55-minute movie and then another 55-minute movie. And they'll all be tied together, but at least now I have a direction to finish it, and I will get it done by Monday night. So that's that. That's when it's going to go in, and that's when it's going to go in. So finally get on with that, and we can get on to some of the other things that have been floating in the air since October, November. Just short of 2 hours, Eric, exactly right. 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 57 seconds. I could have gone to 59 seconds, but, why take chances? So anyway, that's useful because this thing's just been sitting here, for months and holding up a bunch of other stuff. So happy I got a chance to get that out of the way. We'll see it when we believe it. We'll believe it when we see it. But in any event, there it goes. Dave Big Booty says, hey, worked for Pulp Fiction. It's funny to think about that, because on the way over, just before I left the house, I was thinking about Pulp Fiction as I was putting my socks on. That's when I usually have my best ideas. And I just was thinking about the fact that that in Pulp Fiction, the lead character is just plain killed because he decides he's going to go to the bathroom during that 30-second period when the guy he's waiting for comes home. 2.5 hours, great. So I got a little sliding room here. And I just, at the time, I thought it was great, but just sitting down today, just an hour ago, 2 hours ago most, I was thinking, again, Tarantino's by far the most courageous filmmaker I've ever seen. And now, the more I think about that, the better I like it. It's just like, well, what happened? He went to kill this guy's professional assassin, right? Yep. Well, he had to go to the bathroom because that's what people do, and sometimes the cards turn like that. And as John Pershing points out and leaves the damn gun in the kitchen, don't. Yeah, it was a great moment, and not overplayed. There was just a little moment where Vince Vega looks at Bruce Willis, and well, I guess that's how that's going to go, and then gone. Well, Roadrunner in the Twitch stream says creativity in Hollywood inconceivable. That's, how old is that movie now? 30 years almost, something like that. Vincent Vega. Something bad happened to Vincent Vega every time he went to the crapper. Is that true? I did not know that about that. Anyway, so the only other thing I just want to talk about before I get into the questions, and I'll try and get this wrapped fairly early so I can get the rest of these things moving, and then we can have more time, going on. Pushing 40. Yeah. Wow. So I saw earlier today. It happened yesterday, but I saw Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, two of my favorite people, and Senator Cotton as well. I didn't see his stuff, but the three of them were in frame, and I thought any one of those three guys make an excellent president and an excellent vice president. But Josh was going after Zuckerberg, and I watched that, and TikTok, and it was just evisceration. And then afterwards, right after that, I saw Ted Cruz going after Zuckerberg, and I really, really enjoyed that. Holly got. These guys know what they're doing. This is politics is optics. You don't have to like it, but it's true. That's just the truth. Politics is optics, and so these Republicans, these three Republicans, two or three or whatever, have figured it out. Instead of just going after Zuckerberg, they brought him in 15 times now or something, and I'll circle back to you, get back to you on that later. But this time, they brought in the families of the people who'd been harmed by Instagram and Facebook being aware that it was harming 30-40% of the young girls that were watching. Internal, Facebook documents saying that 35-38% of young viewers are suffering from depression or anxiety because of that, and he's just booming it to them. And Hawley actually got to the point where he said something, people behind him kind of applauded, and he said, "Have you compensated these people?" Well, I don't think. Well, we operate to the strictest standards of the. Have you compensated them? You've harmed them. You've obviously harmed them. They're sitting right behind you. And then Hawley, he's really, really good, and he's smart. He's smart enough to not run in 2024 because I'll walk to his house and if he's not already got the idea, I'll walk to his house and get him to run for president in 28. So he actually put enough pressure on Zuckerberg. He said, "Do you want to apologize to these people?" What's he going to say? See, this is how dirty politics is fought, and I don't like dirty politics, but I'm tired of being a victim of it, and it's nice to see people. It's like, okay, like I've said it 100,000 times probably by now. You go to Guadalcanal, the Japanese guy surrenders, you send medics to take care of him, he's wounded, he's surrendered, rules of war, he pulls out a grenade, kills the corpsman plus three other Marines, so we don't take the surrenders anymore. I didn't want it to go that way, the Marines didn't want it to go that way, Japanese wanted it to go that way, and so that's the way it went. But now that's the world we live in, and that's the way politics is done. And for him to have that audience back there, if he had said, "Will you stand up and apologize? Will you apologize to those people?" and they hadn't been there, then Zuckerberg would have just simply said, "Well, I don't see reason why I should have to apologize for anything." But to have families holding up the pictures and stuff, got Zuckerberg to stand up, turn around, and basically apologize to them with a bunch of outs. We're really working real hard to blah 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 blah. But it was just eviscerated him. He went after TikTok and basically said they're taking data that users don't know, and it's going directly to the Chinese Communist Party. How is this not public espionage? How is this not spyware by the Chinese Communist Party? They're taking information from American citizens, tracking our movements and our keystrokes and all the rest of it, and they're not letting us know about it. That's pretty much the definition of covert activity, is when you do something and invade somebody's privacy and don't want them to know about it, because that's what spying is. And he said, "Why shouldn't TikTok be banned in the U.S.?" And I thought, that is a fine question, Josh. It's a fine question. But Ted, who I just really like, I know him. I don't know him well, but I've spent several hours with him, pretty much off the books, and I really, really like Ted Cruz very much. He's just a really good man. Ted was talking about, and this was damning, and again, you can see it here. You can see with these three guys, there's always three or four guys, that know what they're doing out of the entire Republican Party. And Ted, when he was going after Zuckerberg for Instagram, basically did a screen capture. And he put it up there on this giant easel, and it was a screen capture from Instagram. And the capture said something very close to the effect of, "The content you are about to see may contain childhood sexual images." And then the choices were seek additional information or counseling, or view the content anyway. Those were the two choices. And Ted said, I can understand, I can understand, seek counseling, but see the content anyway? You've just made a warning that this could potentially be childhood sexual material, and you are giving people the option to click see the content anyway? That's game over. That's game over, damning. When you can use somebody's own evidence, their own testimony, their own internal things, that's great. But when you've got something like a standard screenshot that says this is an Instagram option, that's jail time, man. That's how you close the deal on these guys. And he said, how many people did you fire for living this option? Well, Senator, I don't know if we got into that. You didn't fire any, did you? Well, I don't see why we have to talk about internal discussions and so on. How many people How many people got to see this screen? Well, I don't know, Senator. Well, I want you to find out. We've asked you about it. We sent you an email about it 6 months ago. You didn't reply. I want you to tell me how many people saw this screen. Well, I'll circle back to you on that, Senator. He said, no, you're not going to circle back to me on that. You've been circling back for 4 years now. You're going to tell me under oath when you are going to deliver this information. And I want to know how many people clicked on the C material anyway. Was it 5? 5,000? He didn't say this. I'm thinking 5,000, 50,000, 500,000, 5 million, 50 million. Who knows? Who knows? But when you can produce an Instagram screen, I was blown away. But honestly, I was just not so much even by Ted Cruz, who were doing a terrific job of it, really putting the stake through it. I was frankly just stunned that was actually real. That there was actually real. And that's case closed, man. It's case closed. And the problem is, and this is just my little wind up, and we'll get into the questions, but the problem is, obviously, if you look at all the comments below that, because I really get more from the comments. Well, I get as much from the comments as I do from the material usually. Is that virtually every comment was just another congressional hearing where they just come in and lie again and nothing ever happens. And that was pretty much the universal comment. Yes, it's damning. Nothing has happened in the past. Nothing's going to happen to him in the future. It's just plain theater at this point. And I thought, okay, well, they're right. There's no question they're right. Why is that? Hang on a second. Yeah, Eric's got a comment here that somebody said Eric for the win. Lady Hawk said Eric for the win. Eric says, one question for Zuckerberg. If you had the see anyway option because we might be wrong, that was Zuckerberg's defense, then why didn't you think about that when you censored the Hunter Biden laptop, Lex Luthor? Yeah, why didn't you say, this is rumored to be Russian misinformation. Check the fact checker, see anyway. So you can see child porn on Instagram. You have an option to do that, but you don't have an option to find out about the Hunter Biden laptop story because they don't want to, they don't want to be wrong on an issue that important. So anyway, back to the point. Everybody's saying nothing's going to happen. So my two-part question to myself, which we'll kind of answer together here, is why does nothing happen? Well, I can only assume it's because the Senate doesn't have the votes to enforce anything, that there's not enough votes for consequences. I don't know, many people out there understand the minutiae of how these things work better than I do. But what does it take? Can somebody who is up on this help me with this? What would it take for the Senate to say, we find you in contempt of Congress, and we're going to sentence you to this many days or years or months in jail? What does that require? Does that require a simple majority vote of the Senate? Is that a 2/3 vote? Is that something that has to go to a special investigator or a committee? How does that work? Anybody know? In any event, whatever the reason is, clearly we don't have it because Hawley and Cruz and Cotton and Kennedy and a bunch of guys are really starting to get good at this. Have again and again and again and again said to these people, you come in, all of them, not just the tech giants, everybody comes in and lies, and they say you didn't answer our questions, you are purposely evading and obscuring we are an oversight committee, so why has there not been any ramifications? Why has there not been any consequences for going in and lying to Congress? Congress is going to be performing a pageant for the cameras. Yes, nothing's going to happen because politicians are holding people accountable for their actions. The metric might circle back to themselves. Yeah, I suppose that's actually a great point. P7 2017 in the YouTube stream says the reason nobody's being held accountable in Congress is because they're worried that if we start holding people accountable, then maybe this accountability thing will come back and bite me. But in any event, here's kind of the conclusion that I'm coming to here. They can only make a referral to the Department of Justice. See, there you go. If you own the Department of Justice, you can do anything you want to. You don't even really need press coverage, although the press coverage is what stops people from going to the Capitol with torches and pitchforks, or just completely unarmed, for that matter. So now to the kind of the denouement, as we used to say in my pretentious days, which ended, I think, on Friday or something. I think what I'm seeing everywhere, and I don't listen to Hannity, I don't listen to Ben, I don't listen to Mike Knowles, I don't listen to any of those guys because they do a great job, and we're pretty much all talking about the same thing. I'm looking for like really weird little signals, and I saw one of them today, for example. There was a comedian who was doing a stand-up comedian, unknown guy, I didn't know who he was, never seen him before, little guy in a little club. And he was doing stand-up in San Francisco. And he said, so here's the thing about Biden. He's about to start on this Biden joke in San Francisco. And somebody in the audience says, oh, come on, just stop, just don't, And everybody started booing. And he's like saying to the audience, like, are you booing me? Or are you booing this person for saying that don't do the joke? We're booing this person. Tell the joke. If a San Francisco crowd of young people in stand-up comedy club are booing somebody for standing up and saying we don't want to hear any Biden jokes, that's not proof, but it's echoes from different locations outside of the political sphere, and I think the political sphere is, it's an echo chamber. So I like to get additional data from other sources. That's just one of many, many, many things. Interviews of apparently there's a pretty good case that's starting to be made that Gen Z is swinging to Trump. So people interviewing on the streets in New York City where the mayor's going to put in like electric charging stations or something, and people are saying we don't need electric charging stations. We need hospitals, and we need this, and we need the roads fixed, and we need this kind of thing. What do you think about Biden? Biden sucks. We're all for Trump now. These are black people, young people, if it is starting to look, when Senk, whatever his last name is, Big Senk, when Senk says we're really in trouble, then they're really in trouble. Honestly, I'm beginning to feel like this is going to be something that is going to be uncheatable. I just think it's going to be something there's just not going to be any way to cover this up. I think they'll try. As we discussed last time, I think it was on this show, my personal prediction, there's no way that Biden's going to debate against Trump. That's just not going to happen. If you're looking forward to it, it's not. I can't see any world where that happens. One of the reasons why I can't see any world where that happens is I took a look at the Trump-Biden debates from 2020, and I was shocked at how much sharper Biden was in 2020. And in 2020, I thought he was a staggering doofus. But that's just, is it jank? Okay, whatever. What really shocked me was how relatively sharp he was during the 2020 debates. And I didn't think he was very sharp, but they pumped him full of something. As I've said many times, this thing about Alzheimer's and dementia, it doesn't get better. There is no cure, there's no recovery. He's going to get worse and worse and worse, and he has for the last 3 years. And there's no way he's going to stand up to Donald Trump. Trump is sharp as a tack. I think Trump is sharper now than he was in 2016. He's just a machine. And Trump is not afraid to hit back. This business of him, pretending to be lost on stage when he's given at a rally, that's great, man. So I predicted, and I'm going to stand by this. May be wrong, but you never know. Frankly, I'd much rather see the rematch. But I predict what's going to happen is Biden's going to stay in the race. He's going to go to the convention. He's going to be the Democratic nominee, unanimous, approval. He's going to make a speech, going to talk about the dangers of the rising fascist state if Donald Trump is elected. He's going to get out of the convention, and once there's no longer a risk of the Democratic Party voters, not Republicans, but Democratic Party voters, voting for somebody different than who the Democratic Party wants, after the conventions and before the election, he's going to drop out of the race, which means that the only alternative will be for the Democratic Party to appoint somebody. And that way, it's not going to be sent to the voters who might appoint, Bernie Sanders or somebody else unapproved. They're just plain going to select the candidate. The primaries and the whole convention thing is just show. So I think that's what's going to happen. I don't know who they're going to replace him with. I think probably, if I'd put money on it, I think it's probably 90% likely to be Gavin Newsom. And I don't think you really want to run on California as a record. I did not see the DeSantis-Newsom debates, mostly because I just didn't want the stress. Newsom is very, very smooth. He's very smooth and very convincing, but the data is just overwhelming, and that's what I would assume. And Newsom is a smart guy. He's an evil guy, but he's a smart guy. And Eric says Newsom's ain't got a snowball's chance. I don't think anybody's got a snowball's chance. I get this feeling that this Trump thing is just, we're still 10 months out, and it's just feeling like much more momentum than there was either in 16 or 20. Much more momentum. So we'll see. But we won't be surprised anyway. We know what to look for. And Roadrunner says that Newsom will have the media lying their asses off to support him, which is true. But here's the thing about that. Every year that goes by, the mainstream media that we used to rail about, even back when I was doing the blog, the mainstream media doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't exist. Nobody watches TV anymore. Nobody watches TV news anymore. I haven't turned on network television in 15, 20 years. And I really think it's going to be quite a thing to see. And if it turns out that it is, you never know, right? You just never know. But if it turns out that it is, it'll be a great example of what drama is all about. Boomers do, maybe Nick. I'm at the tail end of the baby boom. Like the last year, depending on how you define it. And I don't know anybody watches television. It's just over. In any event, one thing we can agree on, whether it's over or not, is that their influence continues to decrease. I, honest to God, seriously cannot tell you the names of the network anchors for ABC, NBC, or CBS News. I don't have the faintest idea who they are. I couldn't even guess at them. So we'll see. But the ability of the media to lie for them is no longer what it used to be. It used to be a 30-point headwind. Now it's maybe a 5-point headwind, 10-point headwind. We'll see. We'll see. But as I was saying, the thing about drama is the definition of a Mary Sue is somebody who just goes from victory to victory to victory to victory to victory. And nobody is interested in that. But at the same time, nobody likes seeing characters that we like take a beating. Nobody likes to see failure. Nobody likes to see setbacks. If it turned out that that you let audiences decide the movie plot as it goes in real time, there wouldn't be any setbacks. I really like Han Solo, and I don't want anything bad to happen to him. Well, we're going to freeze him in carbonite. Really? Yeah, and you're going to have to sit for 2.5, 3 years to see whether or not how he gets out of it, if he gets out of it, and so on. Han Solo at the end of Empire Strikes Back, he's frozen in carbonite, and and we're sitting here going, what? And Luke's had his hand cut off, and the Empire's running everything, and the rebel fleet consists of 15 ships out at the edge of the galaxy rim, and it's like, yeah, that's why the Triumph is so much better, because of you got to have the dip to get the high. Politics may play out that way. Real life may play out that way, where the pain and the agony of the 2020 election, and the frickin' pandemic, and the lying and the cheating and all of this. I'm not saying it will. I'm saying if it plays out that Trump wins big and goes in there with a pressure washer rather than a broom, then it'll mean all the more for this nightmare that we've had to go through for the last 4 or 5 years. So we'll see. In any event, that's that. Somebody mentioned, couldn't remember which one of these things. Somebody mentioned that Mike Rowe did an interview with Neil O'Donnell. And I haven't seen it yet, but I will. And the reason I will see it is because on Monday, I'm doing one with Mike Rowe in Santa Monica. So I got a call from his producer a week and a half ago, and he told me just done Neil McDonough. I said, did you see the Cadillac ad? He said, no. I said, oh, dude, you got to see this thing. He said, I wish I'd seen it before we shot the interview. So, so I'm going to be in Santa Monica on Monday, doing a TV show with Mr. Mike. He's going to do Store Mechanics later, so almost certainly no Stratosphere Studio on Monday. I'm not 100% sure, Dave, but it looks like that. Yeah, that'll be fun, and that's the day I have to get this script out of the door. So finally break this logjam and move on. All right, so let's get some questions going here. Why don't we? Kevin Sorbo's not next, but he's on the short list. So we'll see. It's going to be. I think it's really going to be fun. I have a lot of fun with Mike. He's got a great sense of humor about himself, and I don't know. It's like once you break that it's not exactly the fourth wall, but once you have the unmitigated gall to insult somebody to their face in a comic way, then once you do that, then you can just keep doing it, and it's going to be fun. I don't know when it's going to air. I just know we're recording it on Monday. So he's apparently they're doing a number of them for I don't think it's a Christian broadcasting network, but I think it's a series of shows that I think is going to be sponsored by a church group or something. But Mike is he's awful good. Don't tell him I said so. Yeah, Republicans, Darth Chuck the Merciless. Republicans specialize in snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Ain't that the truth? But in any event, this might be too big. This might be too big to screw up. We'll see. We'll see. It's going to be entertaining one way or another. All right, so then I'll be able to get all these things back rolling, button down the website and all the rest of this stuff. Stratosphere Lounge for February 1st, 2024 by Jacob Belchik. Thank you again, Jacob, Eric, all of you guys for curating this stuff. I just didn't know what we could do here. Okay, so let's see. We got a Jacob Belchik, we got a Marusha, we got a Steve Young, we got an Eric Blake, we got a Roadrunner, and that's it. Good, shortest show. Chris Elisar says, Elsasser. Elisar's, Lord of the Rings thing there. Tell him he would be great in the lead in a reboot of The Rifleman. Kevin's, he's got that movie star. He's a movie star, but he's got that movie star quality of being able to kind of maintain kind of a slight sort of a smile and a calm throughout crisis situations that people really like. All right, so here we go. Hail, Bill. Hail, Jacob. I'm sorry to interrupt. I will get all these questions. Just a second, just remind me of something. I saw something, I can't remember if it was yesterday or today. I think it might have been early this morning. And I was so happy to see it. Only because it was so intentionally obnoxious that it was refreshing to see something that somebody said, this is really going to shock you, and to hell with the political correctness. It wasn't great. The parts of it were very, very good. It was a stand-up comedian. It's a stand-up comedian, and his stage name is Frank Sinatra. And he comes out and sings Sinatra, and he looks like Adolf Hitler. And he's, let me think, he sings "That's Life" is Third Reich, Third Reich. That's what people say. And he's really, really clever. Lots and lots and lots of historical stuff in there, you know. Talks about visiting a country. Again, he looks exactly like, it doesn't look exactly like Hitler, but he's got the hair and the mustache. Says, yeah, I was visiting, Jamaica. I said, name? I said, Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra, occupation? No, just tourism this time. So there we go. It's funny, isn't it? We were able to make fun of Nazis 10, 15 years after, 20 at the most, after the war. Hogan's Heroes, in 60s. The further away we get from them, the more sensitive we become. Same thing with slavery. Further away we get, the more sensitive we become. Maybe we should stop asking, is this too soon to joke about? Maybe we should start saying, is it too late to joke about? Maybe that's what we need to be thinking of doing. But this guy really has some very, very clever stuff. And he's singing this Sinatra thing, and every now and then he just breaks into this Hitler kind of... I thought it was cute. All right, and so here we go. Hail Bill. Hail Jacob. Not Heil. Hail. Avi. Last week I asked a question about projection of values of the left and the right. I wanted to elaborate on that topic a bit. One of the main points that you showcased in the Cold War series was that neither the Soviets or the Americans correctly understood each other. Both struggled to see beyond their own cultural blinders. I wonder if we are seeing this now domestically. We on the right think that the left is stupid. This is because we look at their ideas and assume that only way someone could believe the things that they do is that they're stupid. This is probably the point you're trying to make. I don't think that we say that they're stupid, but it's not that they're born stupid. It's that they go to enormous efforts to be stupid. They really have to work at it, and you have to be pretty damn smart to be as stupid as they are. It's really honestly true. Really, really do have to have a significant intelligence base to be as stupid as they are, because genuinely stupid people don't believe this nonsense, because even stupid people can see that this stuff is just plain ridiculous. The more politically astute on the right we are, also eminently aware of the stupidity of the right as a movement. We use the left's language, get bogged down in arguing policy instead of principle, and ignore the strength of our own message, which is why I'm here. When I see a guy like the new president of Argentina talking about the left in his country, he unapologetically on camera calls them the Shinola leftists, because I have a family freaking friendly show here, and insists boldly and brazenly that the right is more prosperous, more intelligent, more virtuous, and better looking than the left. Bingo. Period. End of argument. End of discussion. End of the Democratic Party. That's all it takes. That's it. Don't be such weenies. Why do you have a $4 haircut when you make the money that you have? That kind of thing, that was what P.J. O'Rourke was just pushing out, and I just bought it all. That the smart people are the ones who are connected to reality, and that you have to be a special kind of stupid to miss that much evidence. Couldn't agree more. He's terrific. I love watching him. Yes, we should be doing exactly the same thing. Donald Trump is closer to that than anybody we've ever seen in politics that I'm aware of. Anyway, moving on. I'm pretty confident in evaluating the American right to be the winner of the stupid party by a country mile. Because politically, our principles are brilliant and our methods are shockingly poor. You make a case for that. Evan Sayek calls it rhetorical intelligence. I think that's an excellent term. They have rhetorical intelligence. It's not that they certainly don't have any insight or anything fresh to say, but they do have the ability to construct arguments, sentences, messages, and that's why most storytellers are left-wingers, because storytelling is fantasy projection. And I ought to know, because that's what I do for a living too. The colonies is how I would like the world I live in to be. This is my view of how I think life should be. And And this is what they do. Only difference between me and them is that I understand it, that it's wish projection, and they think it's actual magical thinking. If we just treat it as real, it'll become real. If you believe you're a woman, you're a woman. That's all there is to it. Now for the left, back to Jacob. Now for the left, I spend a lot of time lurking through places on the internet where the left has absolute dominance. I'm particularly interested in what they say about us. The things that the left thinks we believe are absurd, but they include the following. Mandatory church attendance under penalty of prison. This is really, really interesting. Essentially open season hunting on black and brown people. These are the traits of evil which they think we are. I just want to stop right there. This is the fundamental, enormously important difference between the left and the right, and that is that the right has a reasonably accurate understanding of what the left is saying and doing, and the left has a fantasy version of what the right is saying and doing, and that fantasy is what allows them to believe the nonsense that they believe. This whole idea of a social justice warrior is an absurd term, but if you believe that you're fighting genuine Nazis, if you believe that Republicans and conservatives are going to execute people they disagree with, march them off into camps and put them up against the wall, then you are a social justice warrior. Only thing that's missing from that is any evidence, Other than that, it's an airtight case. Not only is there no evidence, there's evidence to the contrary. The Tea Party example I just keep coming back to. The left was convinced that the Tea Party is racist. Okay, so if the Tea Party is racist, then they should have racist signs at the Tea Party gatherings because there are hundreds of thousands of people. Well, there aren't any racist signs at the Tea Party gatherings. So a person with connection to reality would say, I guess my theory is wrong because there's no evidence to support it. But their attitude was, well, they don't have any racist signs because they're playing the dog whistle game, so we will go out, left-wingers will go out and make racist signs and pretend to be Tea Party members to provide the evidence for us that doesn't exist unless we create it ourselves. See how that works? It's kind of like the whole Russian collusion thing. That's basically it. And so this is the point. If what the left thought about us was true, then I don't think I'd be a leftist, but I certainly wouldn't be a conservative or a Republican. I just wouldn't associate with people like that, and neither would you, and neither would anybody. And so they just continue to tell themselves that they're fighting this great evil. And if there's no evidence for that, then they'll invent some, which is why every time you hear, I don't mean every time, not most of the time, I mean every time somebody sprays a swastika on a dorm room someplace, turns out it was a Jewish student, left-wing Jewish student, or somebody's hung a noose someplace, like a real noose even, not just something you might use to pull down the shades. It turns out it was some black student trying to. It's a Jussie Smollett world, right? We believe that these people are evil. We have no evidence that they're evil. The Trump people didn't attack Jussie Smollett, but he's sure that they would have. And so he hired somebody to pretend to be a Trump person, two Trump people, to attack him, to prove this theory based on the evidence that he can't find in the real world that he has to create in order to make the theory work. This is how you think backwards. This is exactly how you think backwards. Funny that they call themselves the party of science, because science is about what does the evidence say, then let's construct the theory. Leftivism is what is a theory that we like, now let's go construct the evidence. It's just that simple. It's honestly true. That's exactly how it works. All right, moving on with the rest of the question. They believe mandatory church attendance under penalty of prison, essentially open season hunting on black and brown people. I'm sure the black and brown conservatives will find that amusing. These are the traits of evil which they think we are. Nobody on the right believes these things, but they project it onto us. That's another important point. They believe that we want these things because that's what they would do themselves. That's the totalitarian in them coming out the same way that all of this argument about white supremacy is the white supremacist in liberals coming out. When you see young white liberals or older white liberals, any white liberals talking about got to get rid of white supremacy, what they're saying is we white liberals have to get rid of white supremacy because black people are too stupid to be able to do it on themselves. That's what they're saying. They don't hear it, but that's exactly what they're saying. When they say we've got to have black quotas for universities or something, what they're really saying is we white liberals have to we have to enforce some kind of law so that these poor black people who couldn't make it otherwise can make it because of us and our beneficence. And when they say things like Well, voter ID laws are racist. Why? Because it means that black people would have to have an ID. Yeah. Well, black people can't get IDs. Says who? Says all of them that go to the cocktail parties in the Hollywood Hills and in Manhattan skyscrapers. If you ask black people on the streets in Los Angeles or New York, do you have an ID? They look at you like you're from Mars. Of course I have an ID. I couldn't go. Nobody can go a day without ID. Can't forget about buying beer or liquor, something that people usually use. Can't get on an airplane without an ID. I think black people look at these silver birds in astonishment and wonder what it must be like inside. That's what these liberals think. Couldn't possibly have an ID because, they're not capable of it. They're racists. They're white supremacists. So they take that and project it onto us. And we're the ones who are saying we think everybody should be judged on their own merits. So lots of great points here, Jacob, and I know you're not done yet, so we just keep on rolling. Do you think there's any merit to this? I think there's nothing but merit to it. I'm not going to say that everyone on the left is irredeemably evil. They're not. They're not irredeemably evil. But the principles that they cling to absolutely are. We've been treating them like naive but well-meaning fools my entire life and had nothing but trouble for it. I wonder if a perspective shift to be more like the Argentinian president would be helpful. Well, I couldn't agree more with all of this stuff, especially the Argentinian president. I've been thinking about this a lot. And the question comes down to, why do we allow this? Why do we allow this to happen? On the way in, I was listening to a 7-minute segment of Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan, and he says, it's an older segment, he's talking about how we subsidize the destruction of our civilization through college tuitions. And he's saying, why do we do that? And I think that's the question. Why do we do that? And I think it's because of our fundamental sense of fair play and of knowing what to be afraid of. In other words, we don't want to shut down Marxist professors and fire them because it goes against our principles. We believe in free speech. We believe that if these guys have bad ideas, then the marketplace of ideas will solve it. And so we have no inclination to do to them what they do to us all the time, which is shut us off of campus. I don't have any desire to shut leftists up. I don't want the Young Turks to be censored or shut up. I don't want any of this stuff to happen. I don't need it. It's not my business. I don't care. And if I do that, even if I do it for all the right reasons, like they're destroying this democracy and republic, essentially the republic that's keeping their rights intact, the threat of me having the power to shut them down worries me more than them saying whatever nonsense they want to say. Worries me much more. That's a worldview that's consistent with human behavior. That yes, it's destructive for people to be able to tell lies the way they do about everything and have the media amplify it, and Stephen Colbert on the Tonight Show and all the rest of these things. Okay, it's destructive and it's creating enormous harm. But the reason that we don't want to stop them is because we all understand that having the ability to stop them is much more dangerous. Much more dangerous. We don't have that kind of power because we shouldn't have that kind of power. If somebody were to come down and want to invoke deities on this, but let's just say some UFO lands and says, Bill, we've been watching your show, as the entire galaxy has been, obviously. We got a station just on the other side of the moon. We pick it up and then we send it out through subspace, goes across the entire galaxy, and into Andromeda now as well. And we think you've got the smartest take on the world, and we think you're the guy to fix everything. So we're going to come down here and we're going to make sure that you have absolute power, absolute 100% dictatorial power. What I would do with it is I would say, okay, the first diktat that I'm going to announce is that this power irrevocably dissolves in 48 hours. I got 2 days to try and fiat things into recovery. Because the reason I would do that is because if I had more than 2 days of absolute power, I'd start thinking there would be more that I could do. So I would say it before I said anything else. I would get that out of the gate instantly, because that kind of power that's what the ring is about. That's what the Lord of the Rings is about. It's the ring of power, the cloak of invisibility, the ability to command other people. No one can wield that ring. It's inherently evil because even the very best people among you will become evil because of it. That's why Lord of the Rings works. So I figured, if I had absolute power, I figured in 48 hours, by the time I got to sleep, I probably could get some of the major stuff done, repeal 17th Amendment, 16th Amendment, that kind of thing. And generally, I would make sure that I'd sunset myself before I had a chance to become drunk with power, And looking at things from the inside, no desire to hurt anybody. I have no desire to send liberals off to some planet. I have no desire to do anything, really. All I'd like is for the words. All I'd like is for the information to be free-flowing so people could make up their own minds. I think most liberals would stop being liberals, progressives anyway, if they really, really, truly understood what we were about, which is why they have to control all of the information, because a little bit of light comes in and their whole thing goes to the ground. So, Sad Wings Racing says 48 hours, that's a hard walk on the Trail of Tears. 2. Yeah, I think I could probably do that. Yeah, Steve Colbert. Nick says, I can't be the only person whose blood starts boiling when I hear the name Stephen Colbert. Haha. Just before I started the show, fired up the computer and looked at the YouTube, and here's Stephen Colbert saying, the stupid Republicans are at war with Taylor Swift, and the Texas truck convoy limps to the border, and all the rest of this stuff, and he's just sitting there with a smarmy look on his face, and I'm thinking, but your name is on that flight manifest, isn't it, Stephen? Your name's on the list of people that went to Epstein's Island, isn't it? And so is Tom Hanks, by the way. It's fairly reliably reported. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it from several sources. Doesn't mean it's true, but it doesn't surprise me. Tom Hanks, America's dad, yeah, America's dad, apparently, has been to Pedophile Island. And Stephen Colbert has been to Pedophile Island. And a lot of people who I don't particularly think highly of have been to Pedophile Island. And if I was Tom Hanks and Stephen Colbert, I would be pretty nervous about that. I'd be pretty nervous about that. Nick says, Trumpy boy is on that list. My understanding is that Trump was invited, but it did not go. Believe me, if he was on that list, we would have heard about it. And Elon Musk is not on that list. Alan Dershowitz was. Frickin' Stephen Hawking is on that list. So, Trump was said to go many times. I don't know about that. I haven't heard that, but I'd be quite surprised if that were the case. Prince Andrew, yeah, he was there. I need to see some evidence about that. I find that rather difficult to believe. Yeah, Cosby was America's dad too. There we go. Anyway, so Jacob, yeah, it was a brilliant thesis, brilliant question, and I thought it was just spot on. So well done. Okay, Marusha Dark, another couple of big ones here, but that's okay. We only got a few to go after that. So here we go. Marusha Dark. Haven't heard from Marusha for a while. Hope you're doing well if you're out there now or whatever. Topic: the Red Amendment. Yeah. Karnick says it's quicker to talk about who's not on the list. I'm not on the list. You're not on the list. Josh Hawley's not on the list. Ted Cruz isn't on the list. Pretty sure Mike Rowe's not on the list, and so on. So we'll see. So I don't think Trump needs to be on that list on account of all the things that they accuse Trump of doing that he actually did, like the porn star things, and Melania is gorgeous and all the rest of it. All of his wives have been gorgeous. A guy like that doesn't have to go down to a place like that. You can't have it both ways, So anyway, well, of course you can. You can try anyway. Yeah, that's all I agree with you, Kiernex there. So anyway, here we go. Topic: the Red Amendment. I don't know what the Red Amendment is. Let's find out. Bill, I know this is long, but I think you're interested in how it relates to current events and ties many disparate things together. And desperate. Recently talked a lot about the nefarious nature of the 16th and 17th Amendments, the so-called progressive amendments. We can throw in the prohibition as well. And I generally agree with your take. However, I wanted to know if you've heard about any of the following. Something that not often talked about is the pernicious implication of the 14th Amendment and how it paves the way for these two things and more. Most people assume that it's just meant to grant equal rights to the newly freed black slaves. That was the 13th Amendment, I'm fairly sure. It is kind of a two-part thing, but in practice it just enslaves everyone else. It does this in two important ways. Firstly, it lays the groundwork for eroding state and personal sovereignty. Let me do something that half-smart people do, which is when I don't know something, and I'm going to talk about it. Let me see if I can find a little more information. Let me just read it. I'm going to get the gist of it, but if we're going to be talking about it, I would like to actually get it. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of law. So it's the Equal Protection Act. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States. Sounds reasonable to me. Let's hear the argument. This is what learning is about. Oh, darn it, sorry. I closed that window by accident. I'm sorry, hang on a second. All right. Okay, so here we go. Firstly, it lays the groundwork for eroding state and personal sovereignty. Context. Prior to the 14th, you were a citizen of your state first and of the U.S. second by virtue of your state's membership in the Union. That's already interesting. Essentially, the U.S. was akin to the EU now. The EU is not a nation, but an alliance of nations, although some people try and push to make it one, complete with a standing army saying you can't leave, subjecting you to foreign unelected power. Even the Brits, who tried to keep us on the nest, figured out that was not the end of the stick they wanted to be on. Same is true of the U.S. The 14th flips that, creating one nation with the states being more like provinces or countries with primacy given to citizenship in the new nation. This is why you later get the 17th Amendment further stripping states of their power, and why people try to claim that the Civil War resolved the issue that you can't secede. In actuality, it was decided by conquest rather than principle of the rule of law. Whatever else you think of the South side, I agree. And yes, I see your point here. You can't really eviscerate the power of the states through the 17th Amendment unless you've got the groundworks to do it. And I suppose people use the 14th Amendment to push the 17th, so that's an interesting point. Secondly, it says the validity of the public debt shall not be questioned. Well, you can't do that in a republic. Context. Normally, this is interpreted as only applying to slavery and insurrection. However, it's a curious turn of phrase that paves the way for much of what comes later with income taxes, central banking, gold seizures, and other erosions of currencies. It's good to have smart people. The original forebearers of you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. If the debt's invalid, then so are all these other things, and anyone who tries to question it is guilty of insurrection. How convenient, especially given January 6th. Yes, perfect. Also, as an aside, since you keep bringing it up, I regard the term sovereign citizen as sort of an IQ test. Anyone who uses that term to refer to themselves clearly doesn't know what either word means, and it'd be akin to calling oneself a king's slave. Yeah, it is self-contradictory, which is self-defeating on its face. Mostly it's a term I've seen applied disparagingly by government actors to people deemed to be in rebellion. Yes, that's all extremely deep and cool and something to think about. As usual, this is why this show is so much fun for me. By basically saying that a state does not have the right to create a different legal structure for its state citizen than anyone else in the Union, then you are saying that the state cannot do anything. Now constitutionally, they can't do it because of the amendment. They can't do it because it's unconstitutional. Therefore, you're ultimately limiting what state citizenship means. And if you eliminate the idea of state citizenship, then you've just got one giant nation, which is what the progressives want, because it's easier to control a centralized government than it is to control a government that's dispersed 3 ways laterally and 3 ways vertically. Executive, judicial, and legislative, and federal, state, and local. So it's 3 ways, 3 times. And so, yeah, that's a really great point. And this is something I find interesting too. I constantly talk, and most people I know who really understand and love the Constitution feel this way. Feel it's, if not divinely inspired, then at the very least just a miracle of astonishing. What's the word I'm looking for? Unlikelihood that they got everything right, and I still haven't found anything in the Constitution that was gotten wrong. There's a lot in the Constitution that is destructive, but they're all amendments, and none of them are in the Bill of Rights. So the guys that wrote the Constitution also wrote the Bill of Rights. So the Constitution, the first 10 amendments, are perfect. Ever since then, we've been twisting around with things, and we've been doing more damage than good. I find the existence of the Prohibition Amendment and then the amendment that repealed Prohibition, I find that to be very messy from a theoretical point of view. I find it messy, but I don't find it as objectionable as not being able to undo mistakes. I just wish they hadn't made the mistake in the first place. The Prohibition Amendment, also one of the progressive amendments. I don't know how many people realize this, but it's the first amendment that was ever added to the Constitution that took away people's freedoms and rights. The first one that actually reduced their freedoms. All of the others had expanded the category of people who were protected by all of these things. Specifically, I think it was intended for everybody anyway, but in any event, the whole slavery issue is handled very well in the Lincoln movie. In fact, it's handled very, very well in the Lincoln movie. That Lincoln was, that the Emancipation Proclamation was essentially done as commander-in-chief, had questionable legal ground, and the movie Lincoln is worth watching for many, many reasons, but mostly for understanding why the 13th Amendment had to happen and why he wanted it as badly as he did. He wanted it clean. He wanted a clean, he says so verbatim in the movie, I want a clean break. I wanted a constitutional amendment. So anyway, just to the sovereign citizen thing, we've had this conversation. I don't think I really want to get back into it again. But in fact, we had it with Marusha and brought up some interesting points about whether or not you should have to have a license to drive. And you can make a case that you should not. But what we ended up with, at least what I ended up with, was that driving a multi-ton piece of steel hurtling at 80 miles an hour or more raises the ambient level of risk to the rest of us. It is increasing. In other words, that person swinging their fist is now getting very close to a number of people's noses, and not just punching them in the nose, but frankly fracturing their skull and killing them. And I wasn't quite sure about this until somebody mentioned, what about private property? And I thought, yeah, exactly. You shouldn't have to have a license to drive a car on your private property. On your private property, you should be able to do whatever the hell you want to. And in fact, you don't need a license to drive a car on your private property. If you do, you might legally need it, but no one ever enforces that. One of the things that was most fun for me growing up was things like, go-karts for kids. And I never ever told the story before because it never occurred to me, but somewhere around age 15 or so, 14, 15, went down with a guy who I didn't know very well, lived across the street from me, and his father was a member of a yacht club. He had a real nice yacht on Key Biscayne, which is lots and lots of harbors and docks and canals and all the rest of it. And we got to be kind of friends, and he took me down on the yacht to a place in the Keys. I think it was near Isla Morada. I'm not exactly sure, but it was basically an island that was essentially private property. It was just a yacht club, and it had an airstrip and everything. And this guy had a motorcycle, and that's about the only time I've ever ridden a motorcycle. But I learned how to ride a motorcycle, and I was underage, But the thing about it that was nice was it was private property, and also it was something like an airstrip, so I could go fast meaning probably 40 miles an hour, without too much risk of, getting myself creamed by other automobiles. So, yeah. The reason you need a license to drive is because you have to be able to prove that you can operate something that raises that level of risk. Do I think you need a license for a gun? No. And the way we resolved this before was that I don't think you need a license for a gun, but I likewise don't think your freedom to own a gun means you can fire rounds down the street even if you don't hit anybody. Ambient risk. Where does my nose begin and your ability to swing your fist end? And I think it's pretty balanced, actually. I think it's actually pretty well handled. Okay, moving on here. Steve Young. Every person with a smartphone camera, I'm starting to sound like the President of the United States. Every person with a smartphone camera. Every person with a smartphone candle can be a photojournalist, but the mainstream media will provide cover for their leftist ideology by labeling stories of failure of Democrat policies as deepfake AI. How can our reports be taken as credible? I'm worried about deepfake AI. However, there's a large percentage of the population, and the younger you are, the more aware of it you are. Large percentage of the population is aware of deepfake technology, seen deepfake technology. And so, in a weird sort of way, claiming that this is AI deepfake is actually a more effective argument with young people than it is with older people. Older people, especially people, early boomers or whoever's left of the silent generation ahead of us, if they see a video of Joe Biden, doing a rap song or something, then that's got to be true because video is video. The younger you are, the more you are exposed to these new digital technologies, and the more you, we know that's not Tom Cruise in this video of somebody cleaning out their litter box, right? So 5 years ago, or even less, picture it didn't happen. If it happened, show me the photos or the video. Now, if somebody shows the photos or the video, those are suspect too. That's a problem, but it's not a problem that can be solved by anything other than people triangulating on the truth. So, if somebody comes up with a statement like this Hunter Biden laptop is Russian misinformation, we can try to set up barriers to have officials making decisions about what's true or not, but we already know that those people are corrupt. And so anybody who tries to do that, even one of us who tries to do it, if we're not corrupt in the beginning, we will eventually become corrupted by it. That's what we realize and fear, and that's what the left not only doesn't realize, but revels in, because their amygdala is not working. They're not able to perceive threats the way we are. They don't see the threat in absolute power, even though it's right in front of their faces. So we're going to start seeing a flood of these things. And I did not really get into the whole Taylor Swift thing. I don't know enough about it. I mean, it's like a storm that passed out the window. Apparently, the fragments of the story that I have are that Taylor Swift is going to make a big push for Biden and convince all of the Swifties to vote for Biden. And again, the story as I heard it is that some Republicans thought this was unfair, and I don't know what you do about that. It's like, well, what are you going to do? You're going to just, how's it unfair? It's not healthy. It's not good for the Republic for us to do what celebrities tell us to do, but it's not exactly unfair. She's entitled to her opinion, and people, if somebody votes the way they vote based on what Taylor Swift says, well, there's your problem. Which brings me back to my idea of a citizenship test, which of course was in real time mocked by some bridge basement dwelling denizen of the deep murk, saying that this is racist when I specifically said as many times as I could, there's nothing racist about it. It's simple stuff, really. It's not that hard. Everybody who becomes a U.S. citizen has to pass this test. We expect them to know that much about America so that they can vote Not the way we want them to, but vote knowing how the machine works. And this used to be okay because up until 30, 40, 50 years ago, American kids were taught how their government works. I'm old enough to remember civics classes. I'm old enough to remember a class called Americanism versus Communism. But most Gen Zers and many millennials don't have the faintest idea. And so, I'm saying might be a good idea to reintroduce this. You don't have to have property. It doesn't require an elaborate IQ. It doesn't require anything other than the work needed to pass the test. And if you're not willing to put the work in needed to understand how the machine works that you're trying to drive, then maybe voting's not for you. As usual, it's all the criticism against this they're saying it's racist. It's like, why is it racist? Well, because it locks people of color out. Why does it lock people of color out? Well, because they have to study and they have to pass a test. And you're back to the premise of being progressive. And people of color are not smart enough to pass a test. That's why we can't allow a citizenship test, you see? Because of the white supremacy that I'm enforcing as a progressive. Morons. Anyway, so as far as deepfake goes, my understanding caught it around the periphery of this. And when I say the periphery, I heard like an echo of a comment someplace that some of Swift's fans were upset because somebody's doing deepfake porn with her, and that's shocked a lot of people. Yeah, the thing that should be shocking people is access that Taylor Swift's age fans have to pornography, which is unlimited, and we can thank Facebook for that, or Instagram, as we started the show on. So we'll see. It's an interesting point here, and I'm not trying to pick you out here. Short Ass Bastard says, reintroduce the Pledge of Allegiance to schools. The problem with that is, if you can't enforce it. I'm not trying to make a case out of you here. I'm just dealing with what I think the issue is. You can mandate that people have to stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance, but that actually makes things worse, I think. You should say the Pledge of Allegiance because you want to. And you can't enforce virtue on people. This is what we've learned from Sharia societies, You can take away gambling and prostitution and drinking and fun and music and hair and all the rest of it, but you're not taking away human vices, and you cannot enforce that. The answer to that is having having young people having access to an argument that makes them believe that this is in fact a country worth pledging allegiance to, and that's the root of the problem. So while it not only breaks my heart, it fills me with a blinding rage when I see people. You see these young teachers, 23-year-old education majors, with green hair, and talking to second graders about their problems with their girlfriends, and they've got a pride flag in the front of the room, and they don't want the American flag there because it's because it triggers people. Yeah, that makes me absolutely nuts. But again, I think those people should be fired, don't get me wrong. But the answer is not just to stomp on them and shut them up. The answer is to give people the other side of the argument, because truth and Gloria are on our side of the argument. And if there's a level, even a remotely level playing field, we win. That's all I want. Battlesmurf says, Bill, could a voting license be pulled for not passed citizenship test? My feeling is that the real problem with the electoral system now is that voter registration doesn't mean anything anymore. I'm not saying I would do this, mind you. I want to be clear on this. I'm saying it is something to be discussed, because as we found out from Russia and other people earlier, a lot of times the best of intentions can lead to some very bad outcomes. But as a topic for public discussion, the idea that you would not be able to register to vote until you pass the citizenship test has a lot of merit from my point of view. Now, if it turns out that there are aspects to this that I'm not seeing, this is what intellectual honesty is, it may end up being a bad idea. But it seems like a good idea, so if it is a bad idea, convince me. Don't just tell me about your prejudice by saying that's not fair to black people because black people can't study or can't take tests or whatever else you progressives want to justify by your racism card. So there's that. 2 to go. Eric M. Blake. The kind of guy who looks like you don't want to mess with. Man with the hats in the office tonight, come in if you're prepping for November. Well, plenty of time. So, Bill, have you been checking the betting pools for the November election? I have not. Mostly because I lost a lot of faith in them in the last one, but, who knows. The main polls proper have been consistently showing Trump beating Biden in the national polls, which never happens for a Republican, and more importantly, crushing Biden in all the key swing states. Now, as you've often pointed out, Bill, actual betting pools are consistently more trustworthy to look at for the simple reason that people are putting their money on it. So does that betting site you've often pulled up for us before have any predictions so far? Last time I checked the site, it was several weeks ago, or months ago probably. It was still showing the 2022 results, but that was probably the page that I was bookmarked. So give me a second here. See if I can find it. Give me 1 second. Everybody just talk amongst yourselves here. Kind of buried a little deep here now. Here we go. Yeah, that's 2022. So let's see if there's an updated version. Electionbettingodds.com. Hang on a second. Yeah, I had a 2022 bookmark, so let me see what they got. Okay, here we go. Here's what the betting is showing today. And I'll just give this to you real fast. There's a column that says the chance of the Democratic nominee for 2024. Joe Biden at 82%. Gavin Newsom at 6%. Harris at 2%. Hillary at 1%. Warren, Kennedy, Buttigieg, Cuomo at 0.1%. So it's going to be Joe Biden. As I said, I think they'll change that. For the Republican nomination, instead of 82%, it's a mere 90% for Trump, 6.7% for Haley. I'm rather surprised it's that high, to be honest with you. 1.6% for DeSantis. So Haley's got more than DeSantis because Haley is running against Trump specifically, which DeSantis is smart enough not to do. So whatever people call themselves Republicans who are anti-Trump, Haley's getting all of their votes. So it's 90% for Trump, 6.7% for Haley, 1.6% for DeSantis, and then everybody else is in a fraction of percent. Scott is at 0.2, Rubio is 0.2, Ramaswamy is at 0.1. I'm sure it was higher before he left the race. Carlson's at 0.1, Pence is at 0.1, okay, and others 0.5. Interesting. Others are 0.5 for Republicans, but others are 0.7 are 7.6 for the Democrats. On to the one that counts. Chance of winning the presidency in 2024, as of today. Donald Trump stands a 49.4% chance. Joe Biden stands a 36.6% chance, which is very nearly a 13-point lead for Trump, which is significant. And no one else is on the board. Michelle Obama's at 6.2%. Haley's at 1.8%. Haley is more likely to win the presidency than Gavin Newsom, according to this. Newsom's at 1.3, Kennedy's 1.2, Harris is 1.0, Pence is 0.2. Haley's down, Biden's up. Let me just look at the trend lines for this. Hang on 1 sec. It's interesting. I'm glad you brought it up. Home PVP nominee by was president. Oh, and there's a mere $45 million bet on this so far. I would like to see the chart for this, and maybe I don't see it because it's not there. Okay, hang on. Let's have a look in the last. Wow, this is very small. Okay, hang on a second. Hard to do. This thing is. Oh, there it is. Okay. So Trump is in orange, clever. Biden's in blue. Man. Jeez, what the heck is that? Oh, March, June, September, November. So according to the betting pools, starting in September of 2021, Trump was up high and reached a peak in March of 2022, where he was way above Biden at 40%, and Biden was down at like 15 or lower. Then Biden came back, so by the time you get to the end of 22, I would say, yeah. So Biden is up right up until the middle of last year, significantly up. Biden was at 40%. Trump was at the lowest point, was at 22. That's probably Mar-a-Lago, somewhere in there. But now Trump is way up, and the trend lines are fantastic. Trump is going up steeply. Biden's going downhill fast. So you never know. But let's have a look in the last month. I gotta bookmark this because yeah, okay. So yeah, it's I mean, there's nobody else on the board from January 8th until January 25th. The other contenders were hovering somewhere around 10%. Now it's just a flat line. There's nobody left. Highest person who's not Trump or Biden is at 2.4%. So it's Trump and Biden. And right now Trump's at 49.4, and Biden's at 36.5, and that lead seems to be increasing. So there you go. I'm glad you asked, because it's I'll start looking at this a little more often. I'm really glad you asked, because that's I always thought that was interesting information. Okay, last one here from Roadrunner, New Mexico. And I keep saying New Mexico. I'm assuming it's New Mexico. Where else would you have Roadrunners? I suppose you could have them in Arizona. Meep, meep. Let's see. Oh, Jay Coulter has a pithy line. I get to glance over the comments every now and then. We got two sets of comments going. I have not read the documentary, The Great Taking. I will look at it, but it's just a pithy sentence. Where'd it go? Jay Coulter, in response to P7 2017, says, the needle on a totalitarian's moral compass points to himself. That's a snappy little sentence. Okay, Roadrunner, here we go. Greetings, Bill. Last one for the night, and then back to work on this other stuff. The Houthis have recently launched another anti-ship missile against an American warship, the Arleigh-Burke-class guided missile destroyer USS Gravely, DDG-107, was forced to shooting down using their Phalanx close-in weapon system. As far as I can tell, the U.S. Navy has not taken any retaliatory actions for this attack. Does a lack of response increase the chance for further attacks? I've been surprised at and pleased that the Navy seems to be hitting back pretty hard, and we're not just shooting down their drones. We're hitting their bases and facilities and stuff. This is the kind of war that I think America has to face, that we're going to have to be fighting for the duration. And this is the kind of and the only kind of war that I believe we should be involved in. Free passage of free navigation of the world seas is the essence of trade, and the U.S. is a trading nation. The Russians weren't a trading nation. The Germans weren't particularly a trading nation. The British were. And so the open navigation of the seas will be covered by somebody. It'll be either America policing it, or it will be the Royal Navy policing it, or it'll be the French Navy or the Spanish Navy, or it won't be any Navy, in which case it'll be pirates and so on. But this is not only a morally clear issue, it's a clear issue for national prosperity and national security. We have got to be able to have everything. I don't know what the percentage is. Some smart person will click in here in a minute and tell me. But everything that moves in the world's economy in terms of exports moves by water. Virtually all of it. And we simply cannot have pirates launching attacks on vessels. When this story first broke, it was that vessels that were entering the Mediterranean from the Red Sea, coming up from India and so on, were diverting around Africa, which adding 40 days to their journey. And as I mentioned when I first saw this, during World War II, a number of really brilliant German strategists, Hitler was not one of them, thank God for that, But the thing that Churchill feared greatly, greatly, was that the Germans would take the Suez Canal, that the Afrika Korps looked like they almost did it too, but the Afrika Korps would go on and take the Suez Canal. If the Germans during World War II, if they controlled the Suez Canal, that means that British shipping would have had to spend another 40 days or so getting around Africa, which means that whatever shipping England has to get spaced further and further out because it has to go. It's essentially like taking away a third or a half of their merchant fleet. And Britain is an island nation. Britain's dependent on imports. And taking the Suez Canal, I think, looking back on it, was the single greatest missed opportunity that the Nazis had. If Hitler hadn't been Hitler, then there wouldn't have been a war in the first place. But if the Germans had played the smart game, I still think it probably would have turned out the way it did. But the first thing I would have done, if I was playing Risk, is I would have taken the Suez Canal and held it, because Germany is a not landlocked, but it's a land-based nation, and that's why the whole Kaiser trying to build up a navy and Hitler's navy. The German navy U-boats were effective, but Germany's not a naval power. China's not a naval power. They're not naval power in spirit. Russia's not a naval power. America is, Japan is, and Britain is. So, Battlesmurf says Japan had a plan to disable the Panama Canal. If Japan had destroyed the Panama Canal, then our ability to move supplies to the Pacific would have been somewhat dampened. But because our country is the size of the entire continent, we could take supplies from the East Coast by rail to the West Coast, put them on ships there, and we wouldn't have to do the kind of things that Britain had to do because they didn't have any other way to do it. So yes, it would have hurt us, but it wouldn't have crippled us the way it would have crippled Britain. P7 2017 says China has a carrier navy. Yes, sort of. China doesn't have a carrier navy. China has a carrier. They've actually got 3, I think. So they've got that are floating now. That doesn't mean they're moving. I think if memory serves, they have 2 that are floating and moving. Both of them are jump jet, former Soviet, meaning formerly built in Ukraine, angled deck jump jet carriers, or at least based on the design. But they do have a flat deck carrier, which is their 3rd carrier, and it has got electromagnetic catapults the same way that the Gerald Ford class does. We've had a lot of problems with those catapults, big problems with them. And in fact, one of the most clever things I ever heard Donald Trump say was his discussion that apparently he had while he was president the first time, not the second time, which is coming, when he was talking with Navy officials about whether or not to abandon the electromagnetic catapults on the Ford because they were giving us so much problem. And I don't remember where Trump ended up, but he certainly understood the basics of the problem. He understood it like you would expect the chief executive to understand a military problem. Not all the bells and whistles, but get the basics. And what Trump basically was saying is, explaining to the American people, basically saying, okay, look, we've got this brand new carrier. We've got these electromagnetic catapults instead of steam catapults. We're having troubles getting them working. It's very expensive. And Trump was subtle enough to even go here. He said, I've talked with Navy people about this, and they say the main reason for it is, number one, you can cycle up your sortie rate. You can get more aircraft off a deck with 3 electromagnetic catapults than you can with 4 steam catapults. They don't suffer the same wear and tear. There's the question of running hot steam through the whole ship, which is obviously a giant hazard, and all the rest of it. And on paper, they're much better. Trump's point, which I thought was a profound point, was he didn't come up with this, but he factored it into his discussion. He basically said, look, the Ford is an enormously big leap from the Nimitz class carriers that have served us so well. And Trump's point was, would it be smarter to not try and do all of them at once? In other words, the Ford's got a unique 2-reactor power plant. It's got a completely different hull configuration. It's got a lot of new stuff on it. Would it not be smarter to put steam catapults on the Ford, get it into service, and then work the problems out on the Kennedy or the Enterprise or the what's the other one called? Named after the Doris. I forget if that's the first name or last name. And you know, when I first thought, okay, so we're naming it after a guy, Doris Miller. Yeah, he's getting an aircraft carrier. Doris Miller should have gotten a destroyer. Nothing personal, Doris. You certainly earned it, but that's what the naval conventions are. And I was a little upset about that, and then I realized, wait a minute now, hold on. That pardon the expression, that ship has already sailed. Stennis should never have been named after John Stennis. And the come on, I'm not going to look. I was flying off it just the other day. The Stennis and the Carl Vinson should not have been carrier names. Those should have been. Nimitz earned it. Spruance, I could have lived with the Spruance. USS Spruance as a carrier, because Spruance didn't just. I'm not taking anything away from Doris Miller, and I'm certainly not taking away anything from him or from any of the other Marines whom all of our destroyers are named after. Heroes have been given destroyer names, and I don't mean to take away from any of them. Every single one of them are legends, and I stand in awe of all of them. But a carrier is a different story. Carriers have, the Nimitz class, we have 11 of them, have generally been named after presidents. Nimitz was an exception, but Nimitz deserved the exception. Nimitz won the war in the Pacific. Nimitz personality allowed that victory to happen as fast as it had. I think Spruance was right up there. I don't think Halsey was, but Spruance was. If anybody else deserves a carrier in the same level as Nimitz, then it's Spruance. But if it's just going to be Nimitz, I'm fine with that too. I've been on board the USS Spruance, which is a DGG 111, I want to say. I want to say it's a Flight 2 Arleigh Burke class destroyer. It's a fine ship, the USS Spruance. However, Halsey was a PR genius, and Halsey did some great things, and I'm not blaming him for what happened in Battle of Leyte Gulf, but he didn't win Midway. He wasn't there. So Fletcher maybe, has a place above Halsey. But in my opinion, the only other person who qualifies is Spruance. But that's just me. Enterprise is the Enterprise. The reason does anybody remember if Roddenberry's original pitch? It wasn't the USS Enterprise. It was going to be either the Constitution or the Yorktown, I want to say. Hey, we're getting rated. Fantastic. Hey, we're talking, welcome newcomers. We're talking about naming of aircraft carriers and badass things like that. So we're talking about the names of USS aircraft carriers, and it was originally going to be either the Yorktown or the Constitution. But for a little less than a year, something like, 9, 10, 11 months, something like that, in the middle of the war, it was the Empire of Japan versus the USS Enterprise. And I think that Roddenberry realized that. So these Nimitz-class carriers are named after Admiral Nimitz. I think Spruance should have gotten one. Vinson, no. Stennis, no. Reagan gave one to Stennis, who's essentially unheard of. Nobody knows who he was. He just did it because he was retiring, thought it'd be nice. It was probably the dumbest thing Reagan did as president. So on the blocks now, we have the Ford is at sea. We have Enterprise is next, I want to say, isn't it? Forrestal would be another great one. Forrestal was an amazing guy. John Forrestal was an amazing
And
man. And the USS Forrestal was the first supercarrier, and what happened to Forrestal was frickin' horrifying. Forrestal should definitely be back in the race, and Hornet as well. Okay, so the next one off the deck is Enterprise, I think, right? And then the Kennedy, and then the Doris Miller, I think. As I was saying, I don't know if Doris Miller deserves more than any other Marine or seaman than usually get a destroyer, but as I said, Doris Miller deserves a carrier more than Carl Vinson or John C. Stennis does, and those are already at sea, so that's that. Constellation would be great, yeah, and I'm sure we'll get to all those names. But in any event, the the question was originally about the Houthis, and we've been smacking it back. And the reason I was led down this primrose path is because I like it. And by the way, Kennedy is an interesting case because a lot of naval guys say Kennedy should never let his PT boat been cut in half. And how do you let a PT boat get cut in half by a destroyer? But it did. But that doesn't take away from Kennedy's personal bravery, and it doesn't take away from he swam these guys to shore with a broken back, and that's not John Kerry's history. So Kennedy had a Nimitz class. Was it a Nimitz class, or was it the last of the Enterprise classes? There was the USS John F. Kennedy, and it was non-nuclear. I think it was the only non-nuclear Nimitz class, and it was decommissioned a long time ago. They just said it was just junk, it leaked, and they're trying to put a conventional power plant in a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. So CVN, whatever that was. This says I was a crew on USS John F. Kennedy CB-67. It was his first carrier. AOC, can you tell me, was that Enterprise was a one-off? Was the Kennedy a Forrestal class, or what? I don't think it was a Nimitz class carrier, was it? JFK was a Kitty Hawk class. Okay. Anyway, Kennedy's getting a Ford class supercarrier, and I think he deserves it. Anyway. What I was basically saying is that this is the kind of people say, oh, you're a warmonger, you want to send troops to Ukraine. I don't want to send troops to Ukraine. I've never said I want to send troops to Ukraine. I don't want to send troops anywhere if I can help it, frankly. I don't think we should be sending troops anywhere. But the Navy, on the other hand, this is the kind of thing that we not only have to do, but should do and are good at doing. That's why we have a Navy. God bless the Navy. People want to stop the free passage of shipping in the world. They want to block off the Suez Canal and add 40 days travel. No. That's what we have a Navy for. Go over there and get them. Asa Finley says, by the way, why is John Kerry so anti-war? With a mug like that, he should be leading the cavalry. Well played, sir. But this kind of warfare is not only expensive in money and cheap in lives, which is the way it should be for America. It's also extremely effective, and somebody has to do it. And if we don't, then either someone else will do it, or the ability for us to have a trade economy will fall apart. And we've hit the Houthis back pretty hard, and I would like to keep hitting them back hard because of all the things I despise in the world. Piracy and looting are high on the list. Any kind of stealing of goods, that kind of thing that other people have worked hard for, no. I'm about bringing the big hammer down on those people. So if you don't want to get cruise missiles on your head, maybe you should stop attacking shipping that has nothing to do with you. And of course, they're paid for by Iran, so they're not just paid for by Iran, they are a proxy of Iran. This is Iran launching a war against the shipping of the world. It's like they've been at war with us since 1979, and we just keep pretending like they haven't been. I'll close with this. This is the thing I see so much with, saw it so much in the Cold War when I did the Cold War series. And I think this is a quality, generally speaking, of at least historically, of Democrats in the U.S. And that is that it's a hysteria about our enemies or potential enemies' capabilities and a complete dismissal of our own capabilities. And this brings me back to my favorite story about Ulysses S. Grant, who started the war as a captain and had a encounter minor battle of the Civil War by Civil War standards, although it was early and it was big at the time. So Captain Ulysses S. Grant was leading his troops up a hill where the Confederates were camped at the top, and he started up at dawn, and he was quite sure that when he got to the top of the hill, he'd be looking right at this line of Confederate soldiers and cannons and all the rest of it. And he said his heart was in his throat all the way up there. So as he got to the top of the hill, I'm sorry. Oh, Digger. I think this is the best thing. You win the internet for the night, sir. In the YouTube stream, Digger recommends the USS Carl Jr. Carl's Jr. The USS Carl's Jr. Love it. That's going on a T-shirt. Anyway, so Grant is leading his troops up there, and he's expecting to run into all this fire. And he gets up to the top, and he says, and I got up there, and they'd gone. And Grant said, turned out that they were as afraid of me as I was of them, and that's a lesson I never forgot, Grant said. And he didn't forget it. That's how Grant managed to win the war. Finish the war. It was going to be won one way or another, but finish it. Lincoln said, I need to find a general who can do the arithmetic. That's a profound thing for Lincoln to have said. Before he landed on Grant, he tried, I don't know, was it 7 or 8 different generals, McClernand, McClellan, Pope, McClellan again, Burnside, Hooker, Meade, trying all these generals. I'm sure I missed 1 or 2, to fight Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. And no one could do it. And finally, after Fredericksburg, which was Burnside's debacle, probably the worst shellacking, most one-sided shellacking that the Army of the Potomac took anyway. Lincoln basically said, look, we've just been annihilated. We lost 4-1 or 5-1 or something like that. And Lincoln said, this is the greatest defeat that the Union Army has ever suffered, that the Army of the Potomac has ever suffered. He said, and if we continue to have a defeat like this again and again and again, we will win the war in a year. Think about that for a second. That's what he said. He's right. He said, our reserves of manpower and material are so much greater than the Confederacy's that we can have a string of catastrophes like Fredericksburg. And if we continue to fight them and lose at the level that they whipped us at Fredericksburg, we will win the war in a year. And that is genuine genius, and this is why Lincoln aged 20 years in the Four. How do you deal with that as a human being, right? How do you deal with that? He's basically saying, I'm going to have to kill 4 boys in blue, 4 or 5, if we have to end this thing. If that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. If we're not willing to face the arithmetic, that's the term he used. I need somebody who can face the arithmetic. He said, if we don't face the arithmetic, then this war is never going to end. At the beginning of the war, the Confederates had all of the great generals. At the end of the war, the Union had all the great generals. But Jackson and Stuart and Lee, obviously, and he said, we can't win the war unless we fight them. And if we fight them, they're whipping us. But if we keep fighting and they keep whipping us, we will win the war. That's how much stronger we are. So when he was looking for a general, when he settled on Grant, he said, I can't spare this man. He fights because Grant understood the arithmetic. And the Civil War was won after the Battle of the Wilderness. It was the same battlefield where Hooker got whipped at Chancellorsville, which was Lee's greatest victory. At Chancellorsville, Lee rolled up Hooker's, his right flank. In the Wilderness, which is Grant's first outing, he rolled up both of Grant's flanks. Whipped Grant out of his mind in the very first fight that they fought. And the Union soldiers are retreating, and they're heading back across this ford, and they're getting to this road that they've marched. They've been whipped again and again and again and again and again, whipped by these Confederates. And every single one of the soldiers that survived the Battle of the Wilderness is sure that they're marching back to Washington to camp for another 6 months, 8 months, drill out, get a new guy in here, and so on. They got to this road, and instead of turning left to go north, they turned right to go south. And this cheer spread all the way down the line of the Army of the Potomac. Once they realized that they just lost a battle and they were going south, that's when those guys said, okay. And unfortunately, the major killing of the war happened in that last year. Most of the casualties that we took happened after Gettysburg because Grant had to do what Lincoln had to do, had to face the arithmetic. And so, that's history. That's what happened. And somebody had to make that decision. And this is why this Lincoln revisionism drives me insane. And this thing that I'm a big believer in the 11th Commandment. So I do not speak ill of other conservatives, but I did listen to Razorfist's so-called indictment of Lincoln, and I thought it was bilge, just drivel. Lincoln started the Civil War because of a trade embargo or a tax. Come on. It's just a cheap shot at trying to look deep, It's just, no, wrong. Anyway, I think that'll do it. So, relatively short show tonight. Hour 50, no, 139 recorded. Not too bad. Yeah, it says vlogging through history already shredded him. I didn't want to do it. I don't need to make enemies on our team. He's got a lot of reach and he's right about most everything. And it's a it's kind of the thing where we were talking about this with with these what was it? Oh, some of the stuff with Daily Wire with Candace Owens and Crowder and that kind of thing, right? It's like these are disagreements amongst ourselves that we can have in private. These don't need to be out there to provide, ammunition for the bad guys. Eric Blake says we should name the next carrier the USS My Guy. Have a public. Let's let the public name the next warship, and we'll get the Bodie McBoatface. Don't do that. Bad idea. Hey, Lapco92 super chat dropping in late again. Hope you're doing well. Obligatory 1, 2, 3 reminder. Thank you, Lapco. Frank Luke's going out the door by Monday night, one way or another. Finished not, it's going. So that'll give me a chance to actually do something other than work on this, which is what I'm about to do the second I hang up this here telephone and stop talking to you good people. So there we go. I wouldn't mind seeing the USS James T. Kirk. I think that'd be kind of cool, frankly. But anyway. It's sad when he says Razor's a really good dude. He is a good dude. A USS Whittle. Yeah, the USS Whittle is a laundry ship. That's when The Simpsons were written by the best writers in comedy, best comedy writers in the world ever. I think ever gathered in one spot. Better than on the Dick Van Dyke Show. Better than on Seinfeld. Better than on Cheers. The 6, 7 seasons that The Simpsons had between seasons 3 and 10. There's never been writing like that. Ever. And that's one case of generally left-wing people mocking themselves. They were talking about, I think it was when the Simpsons were visiting Australia or something, and the president or the U.S. needed to get them out or something. He said, what do we have that's in the area? And the answer is, well, we have the USS Walter Mondale, but that's a laundry ship. A laundry ship. Oh, Lord. A laundry ship. Well, yeah, I think I'd rather have had Jimmy Carter on an aircraft carrier than on the Seawolf class ship. Honestly, it's just something. I mean, he was a submarine guy, okay, but I like naming conventions. It's the thing about Star Trek fandom, by the way. Here's something for me to close with. What's interesting about Starfleet in terms of fan lore is that Starfleet is the only naval force in history that has more different classes of ships than they have actual ships. Most navies, you have a class of a ship and you build 7 of those, or we got Nimitz class and we built 11 of those, and then you got the Ford class and we're building 5 of those. But in Starfleet, there are more different classes of ship than there are actual ships. Everybody's got a brand new class of ships because Star Trek has a design ethic. And if you put a round thing and then long things on stalks, then it's a Starfleet ship. And I've seen hundreds of them. Most of them are garbage, and some of them are fabulous. So there you go. I am going to do the cranky old boomer's guide to what is and what is not Star Trek, and that's what it's going to be. Yeah, Excelsior. Yeah, I wasn't impressed with Excelsior. The thing that I didn't like about Excelsior is I didn't like the rubber neck thing on the main body, but I especially didn't like the right angles on the nacelles there. It's just like, come on. Well, there may be lots of those, but I'm going to do it right. If it's not got a round part, then it's not a Starfleet vessel, sorry. And if your engines are smaller than the shuttle bay, let's say, I'm talking about you, Enterprise D, then it's not Star Trek. And if it's got a letter after it, it's not Star Trek either. So there you go. I'll have that conversation a little bit later. Yeah, the Constitution class, cinema refit, the Enterprise class looking. Dave Big Booty's right. The Enterprise that first appeared in Star Trek: The Motion Picture is the most beautiful science fiction vessel ever created. There's nothing like it. It is perfect. I've seen lots of takes on the original Enterprise that look cool, and some of them, a couple, look cooler than the original Enterprise. But the movie Enterprise is just flat out freaking breathtaking. It's breathtaking. And maybe for next show, somebody's redone the. Why don't we do it now? What the heck? Talk amongst yourselves. Give me a second here. Somebody redid the Enterprise leaving space dock. I think they did it in Blender, and it's just breathtaking. So talk amongst yourselves. I'll grab it. I'll download it, chuck it in there, and we'll go out on that. We open Star Trek, the Stress for Studio. But that's what we're gonna do. So give me a second here to find this thing. Because it's fantastic. Jeremy Boring and I are both connoisseurs of this, by the way. We constantly sending each other having something to do with Enterprise. This looks like it. Let me just check it. So basically what this guy's done is he's recreated, he's taken all the live action stuff, and then he's put in new graphics over where the old special effects were, but this is worth the wait. This is actually from Star Trek 3, apparently. So this is the Enterprise leaving, not leaving the scaffolding. It's leaving space dock with the doors open, but it's just so bloody beautiful. I'm just going to show it to you. So here it goes. Hang on. Share. Copy. Download. This is why it's such a fun time to be alive with computer graphics and stuff. By the way, this model of the Enterprise, I have this model. It was available for free. The guy who made this model of the Enterprise, available for free in Blender. I downloaded it, and I downloaded his Reliant as well. I'm going to do, when I finally get this Frank Luke script out and I get all these other things going that I promised, I am going to do a Star Trek animation, and I'm going to use actual lighting, and I'm going to do something with the Apollo 11 site. So there you go. But for now, this would be a good way to get out of this show. Because this is just beautiful. Okay, so here's what we're going to do, kids. I'm going to do this. We have 2 streams going, which is always makes things so much more difficult and amazing. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to drag this into YouTube first. So I'm not coming back after this YouTube. So thanks for joining us. It's been great seeing you. And I have to just drag it in live. So actually, I'll drag it into the logo thing so that the mic is off. So all of you on Twitch, just stay where you are. YouTube, here you go. You lucky guys. It's going to take me a second to resize it. But thanks for joining us. The show's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. We never forget to thank for their tremendous support. And I don't know if we'll see you Monday because I think I'm doing Mike Rowe, but we will see you next Thursday, if not sooner. So here you go, and enjoy this while it's enjoyable. Hang on, it's coming right at you. Okay, hang on there, YouTube. I don't know why it does it. I just don't have any idea. Everybody just be cool for a second here. I'll get this sorted out. I'll just do a whole new scene for it. To hell with it.
Captain on the bridge.
As you were. Lieutenant.
Valeris, sir. We were told that you needed a helmsman, so I volunteered.
Lieutenant, it is agreeable to see you again. The lieutenant was the first Vulcan to be graduated at the top of her class at the academy.
You must be very proud.
I don't believe so, sir.
She's a Vulcan, all right.
Let's get this over with. Departure stations. Scotty,
Hi, sir.
did you find the engine room?
Right where I left it, sir.
Stand by. Uhura, get me the dock master.
Control tower reading, sir.
Control, this is Enterprise. Requesting permission to depart.
This is Control Enterprise. Permission to depart granted. 30 seconds before gates.
Clear all mooring. Aft thrusters.
Thank you, Lieutenant. 1/4 impulse power.
Captain, may I remind you that regulations specify thrusters only while in spacedock.
Jim.
You heard the order, Lieutenant.
Aye, sir.